welcome to United States Decides 2024, the special show in TeleSUR English, in which we'll be following the electoral process in the United States. We had a winner last night, that was Donald Trump in the Republican Party, and we'll be analyzing aftermath today. My name is Belen Santos, and with me as my anchor with all the information, all the data, is of course Gladys Quesada. Hello, Gladys.
Hello, Belen, and yes, precisely as you were announcing and explaining today, in the aftermath of this fresh result and outcome of the presidential election in the US, we are going to give you the latest updates, but also a little bit of analysis on the figures and the data and how the vote took place in the US. All of this with you and, of course, with our audience in this show today.
Exactly, and also joining us again is Professor Danny Sho. Thank you, Professor, for joining us one more time.
Thank you for having me. There's a lot to unpack now that Donald Trump, to the end of the list, is the 47th president of the United States.
Exactly, and that's not all. We're also joined by correspondent Luis Gutierrez, who is in the United States and bringing us all the information he also did last night. Hello.
Yes, Belen, thank you, and thank you, Gladys. Good afternoon or good evening to you, everyone in the studio, to our audience. From here, continue to report on the results of this presidential election, and throughout the rest of the night, we'll bring every detail as well as the latest updates to our audience around the world.
And it's so important to have all these testimonies. We will continue throughout tonight to analyze what were the results last night and bring you everything you need to know to continue going through this electoral process. This is United States Decides.
Hello and greetings from New York. After Trump's victory and Kamala Harris' acceptance of defeat, what's next for the United States with the new Republican administration? All details in our special show.
That was Henrique Miller, our special envoy in New York, also bringing all the information to this show, in which we will continue to analyze the aftermath of last night's elections in the United States. This is United States Decides 2024. So now we begin with the information, and we need to begin with the most important data that we have from last night. We were all night last night following this electoral process, and we finished with the electoral win of Donald Trump from the Republican Party. And now we'll go and see some key general data regarding this election, how the voting was, how the final results were. So let's try to see them on screen. So we are seeing now some data on screen. The total amount of votes counted stood at 140,024,261 as the votes continue to be counted, with Republican Donald Trump obtaining over 72 million votes, which represents more than 50% of the ballot cast, while Democrat Kamala Harris has over 67 million votes in her favor. That represents more than 47% of the totals. As for the electoral votes from the 270 needed to win. Trump obtained so far 295, earning those of the 7 key swing states. For her part, Kamala Harris gained only 226 electors, losing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, who voted blue in the year 2020. Republicans are also winning the U.S. Senate, a party that has been locked out of the majority in the chamber since 2021. With some races still to be declared, Republicans will have at least 52 seats in the chamber. As for Democrats, their total of 44 seats includes one independent senator who caucuses with the party. For its part, the results for the House of Representatives are being reported in races across the country. For the 218 seats needed to win, Republicans have 205 with 6 seats flipped and are defending a narrow majority which they won in the year 2022, while Democrats have won 190 seats, flipping 2. Before we get into the analysis of these numbers that we've just gone through, let's go to Luis Gutierrez in Los Angeles to bring his perspective about what was happening on the West Coast last night and today. Tell us, Luis.
Yes, Belen. Well, they became relatively calm after, well, everyone was waiting for the final count, for the final results of the Electoral College. However, when we woke up this morning, when we went out to the street this morning to talk to people and get some reactions, what we encountered was, very disappointed, very disappointed attitude among the California voters. That was in the early hours of the day. However, through the day, we started to find out about all these different rallies that were being organized around the city. Behind me, you might in a moment see a group of people that are marching in the neighborhood of Boyle Heights. This is the east of in East LA, and let's just to give you some more context. Boyle Heights, it's the heart of the Latino resistance in the city of Los Angeles. We're organizing to have a moment to do some outreach to the community and to communicate a message that the migrant community is not alone, that the Palestinian people are not alone, and that people will continue to organize their new Donald Trump president.
Excellent, Luis. Thank you for your information and to continue to bring us everything and the latest in the West Coast. We'll come back to you either tonight or as the days come during this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to first impressions regarding the numbers that we just read.
Precisely. I think that last night was a swing victory for Donald Trump, and as many international media are saying, it is one of the most will be one of the most remembered political comebacks, because let's recall, he won against Clinton back in 2016. He lost the presidential bid, the presidential election, and the re-election bid that he did in 2020. And afterwards, despite felony charges against him, despite the general media and the public giving him, the losing seat, he is now here standing as the new president of the U.S. And he was the 45th, and now he's the 47th. And not only the way that he won, okay, because of the electoral votes, also the gains that he did as the new candidate for, the president of the United States, and how he prompted new voters for some states that had a Democrat tendency and trends regarding votes, and even in those states and those counties that were discussing topics like abortion rights, like minorities' rights in some cases, and he gained traction, he gained voters. And something about electorates and something about votes is that you don't lose or win a vote because of nothing, and you don't win a vote in a day and you don't lose a vote in a day. So those people, those votes, those figures that in the bottom line are people social actors and individuals, they change their mind because some situations become some lacks in one side and some proposals in the other. So we have to see the two sides of this, because it's not only that Trump now has a greater or maybe a stronger discourse, is that also the Democrats left blank spaces and, as we were saying last night, gaps in the politics and in the discourses.
And we'll be going through that analysis in this special show. Let's listen to some of what Trump was saying last night. Okay, Danny, first impressions of this electoral win?
About 140 million Americans voted last night. That means roughly over 100 million did not participate, whether it was boycotting the vote or voting for a third-party candidate, or they weren't allowed to vote because they've been charged with a felony and disenfranchised. It's interesting to compare this amount of participation to years past. Trump didn't just win the Electoral College, he also won the popular vote by roughly 4.5 million votes. Still, some votes are still coming in, but this is a resounding, sweeping victory. First time a Republican president won both the popular vote and the Electoral College vote since 2004, when George W. Bush did it. And the Senate, in the House of Representatives, the Senate at this point stands with 52 seats for the Republicans, with only 45 for the Democrats, and they're up in the House of Representatives with some seats still to be determined. This was a massive rejection of the Democrats, of Kamala Harris as well. It sure seemed like after the first Trump assassination, which was an inflection or a high point in his campaign, when they announced Kamala Harris, there seemed to be quite a bit of enthusiasm that the octogenarian, the elderly Joe Biden was no longer in the mix. But they did not have enough momentum. She had a very poor showing. Listening to her concession speech, she encouraged people to accept the result. There's no way that she can say fraud. Surely they'll again try to blame the Russians, because the Democrats are not good at self-reflection. In looking at, it's the void that they created. It's the economic negligence, their inability to respond to everyday working class needs that created this social and economic vacuum in which Donald Trump was able to come in with his rhetoric, with this whole front that he's the candidate of working people. But at this point, the American people have given him the mandate for the next 4 years.
Exactly, and we'll come back to some of those topics you were just making reference. Now let's go and listen to what some of Donald Trump was saying last night, particularly making reference to this powerful mandate that means also winning the Senate, for example. Let's listen.
This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. We don't know it would be meaningful if we end up there, but it's only 14. America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try. We have to try. And it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that. They came from all corners, union, non-union, African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, Arab American, Muslim American. We had everybody, and it was beautiful. It was a historic realignment. This is a great job. There's no job like this. This is the most important job in the world.
So there's a lot of things to break down from what Donald Trump was making point last night after his electoral win. One of the things had to do with the powerful mandate, that's how he called it, that the people had entrusted on him, not only because he was winning not only the electoral but the popular vote, as you were just mentioning, Danny, and also by taking control of the Senate. So what does this mean?
This is a complete rejection of what the Democratic Party stands for. Liberals in my country, in the United States today, had a very difficult time. They were up late, they were praying. I think from very early we witnessed it unfold live here, watching state by state. We could see from really the beginning as the votes came in the early votes that this was a clear mandate for Trump. This is a rejection of what Kamala Harris stands for. She brought all of the celebrities out to speak up for her, but neither Robert De Niro, Lady Gaga, or LeBron James was enough. The American people want concrete improvements. Trump, with his America First and Make America Great Again rhetoric, though it is rhetoric, these jobs are not going to return, these industrial jobs that have left. So it'll be interesting in the next year or two to see the ongoing radicalization of the working class across the U.S. as they see that Trump is just that. He is a pundit. He loves to hear himself speak. He's a braggart, and he's been very open about his xenophobia, about his racism. So I think liberals in America are going through an existential crisis. Many are saying that they're actually going to leave the U.S. for the next 4 years and go to Canada or Europe instead of staying and fighting against the very conditions, the economic marginalization and neglect that has given Trump this mandate. And so if we don't analyze the objective factors that created this vacuum, what's going to change? It'll certainly be interesting to see what type of rhetoric Trump continues to use about the Constitution. Right now, he doesn't have to blame anybody about stealing the elections from him. But surely there is a reason to be afraid that in the next 4 years, he could try to usurp the Constitution, stay in power longer. As we heard from Luis in Los Angeles and Boyle Heights, one of the traditionally Latino, Chicano neighborhoods of Los Angeles, people are already in the streets. Every immigrant, every LGBTQ person, every woman in America, I think, does have reasons to fear. There is such a history of hate crimes and xenophobia, sexism, homophobia. All these things are very real. We could see a spike in hate crimes. That's also something that the liberal media will try to manipulate. Last time Trump won, they said the next day that there was a 4,000% increase in hate crimes, and that seemed more like hyperbole than actual facts. So there is a lot of hysteria and perhaps paranoia on the liberal side of this equation.
Okay, so now let's go, as we continue to analyze this electoral win, to Henry Camelo in New York with the latest also over there.
Good evening, Belen and Gladys. Reading from the Big Apple. And Kamala Harris finally accepted her defeat. And the big question here in the Big Apple is, what will be the next for the United States with this new administration? Well, regarding immigration, the return to its zero tolerance policy, the phrase "let's build the wall" from his 2016 campaign gave way in this election cycle to the largest mass deportation program in history. Trump has called for use of a National Guard and giving more power to national police forces, although he has not spoken he only has spoken in general terms and has not specified what the program would be like and how he would ensure that it targets only people who are in the United States illegally. He has proposed doing an ideological test for those who want to enter the United States, ending the birthright citizenship, which could require a constitutional change, and reactivating policies from his first term, such as the Stay in Mexico program. He has also proposed limiting the entry of immigrants for public health reasons and severely limiting, banning entry from certain Muslim majority nations. Another of his plan goes against diversity and LGBTQ rights. Trump has called for reversing the societal emphasis on diversity and giving legal protections for LGBTQ citizens. He has also proposed ending diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in government institutions that are funded with federal funds. So there are many changes that people should expect in the next coming years.
Thank you, Henry. We will continue to follow that. We're going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and we are continuing to analyze the repercussions of this electoral win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we go for a short break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. A ver. No necesito que me copien, necesito verlo como lo dejé yo. Ok. Listo. ¿El full está montado? Listo, perfecto. Ok. ¿Y vamos a empezar con eso? Ok. Hello, so we continue in USA Decides 2024 as we continue to analyze the electoral process that had its high point last night. And a lot has been said during this past day about the demographics of this election and how the votes shifted and how can we understand not only the Trump win, but also his win in popular vote, which means that a lot of votes have shifted towards his direction. So let's see on screen some key demographics, just some numbers, of course not all, but some pollings have been done as exit polls and some data has been crossed, and I just wanted to share with you some key numbers so that we could analyze a little bit better. So what we're seeing on screen is that the Hispanic Latino vote in elections was 52% for the Democrats and 46% for the Republicans. That means that while it still has a majority vote for the Democrats, that Republican vote, that 46%, had a big growth. It was up from the 32% it had in 2020. So that was a big rise. Within the Latino men, their voted for Trump was of 5%. So that demographic had a big majority for the Trump, and it's expected that that was one of the areas in terms of demographic that really pushed this actual win for Trump. Also, another key demographic in terms of understanding where these votes are coming from, and that's what I wanted to share with you and talk about today, has to do with the education level of voters and their decisions. And just two key factors in this discussion. We have some exit polls showing, as previous analysis in the previous days had also shown, that voters who have never attended college were voting 63% for the Republicans and 35% Democrat. That's a big lead for the Republicans in that segment. And quite the contrary, voters with advanced college degrees were voting majority 59% for the Democrats. So those are the statistics, and that is the information from where we could understand and jumpstart a discussion on where did Trump get this vote? Well, I think there's an interesting thing to point out. We were talking last night about not only thinking about the Hispanic, the Latino vote, also the women, but also a class segment that had to do with understanding where these alignments were. So Gladys, what do you think about this?
First of all, education, and as we have been discussing in prior emissions and broadcasts, education is now a status quo symbol, because as we know, education it means extra resources, it means a steady economy, patrimony and family, and education is also aspirational. So you have education as a margin for social ratings, you have people who have aspirations, who have other visions, and also it marks, we want it or not, it marks the cultural background of the people, the ambiances, and how they have critical thinking regarding the politics and socio-economic issues. So of course, it has attraction, it has the ground on how people could approach to politics, and in this case it is obvious that it had a toll on the vote for Democrats, and it made gains for Trump. You were presenting some statistics, it was very interesting to see, and other numbers also give more information regarding, because in 2016, when Trump ran against Clinton, for example, there was 1.9 percentage points for the Democrats in the cases of people with a college degree, okay? In 2020, when Biden ran against Trump, there was 5.7 percentage points for the Democrats. But in this election, the wins, and of course, because we are seeing the big picture numbers, are for Trump, because in this case, he gained 3.3 percentage points in the margin of people with a college degree, but he grew in 1.5 percentage points in some counties amongst the people or the population with less, degrees in education. So there is a role, there is a play, and as I was saying and explaining, I think that it has to do, or it comes to play with the aspirations, because education is how people conform also the the future of their kids. Is an inversion also economically. So maybe in sectors that have seen a society and an economy that is in a downfall, okay, so they have this vision that hard work, okay, and services and other kind of jobs are paying more socially and economically than not just education, and that maybe could be one of the points that turn the tables for Trump.
Well, we were warning last night about the dangers of having a superficial approach to this identity reads in terms of, well, generally Latino population will vote Democrat, because if we analyze the rhetoric, if we analyze like who's talking about criminalizing Latino people, for example, it makes sense to vote one way or the other. However, all the experts or all the analysis now is heading towards really the question of, well, then how do we explain such an increase in the Republican vote on a special sector? And I was bringing this statistic regarding education, because if we think that those who are not accessing higher education are not doing so because they belong to, for example, a sector of society, the working class, that have not been facilitated those access, we are looking at a working class perspective, and there is a sector of people worried about that downfall economy that have not gotten their answers from that Democrat rhetoric. So how do you see that, Danny?
Yeah, those demographic statistics are fascinating. They're extremely telling about the Dems' abandonment of the working class, particularly not in the coastal regions, but in middle America, which has now long been, for the past 8 years, what they call quote-unquote Trump country. When we talk about 55% of Hispanic men voting for Trump, it's because Trump is more relatable. When we start talking about academia, education, higher education in the United States has become more and more dominated by this agenda of identity politics. That's why we've seen this conservative backlash, often an opportunistic backlash or radical backlash where they tried to reduce college education to just being simply a type of indoctrination and wokeness. Now that's more hyperbole than reality, but there is a huge truth behind that. Academia really teaches us, a survivor of academia myself, the Ivy League, etc., really teaches us to disdain our fellow Americans, to look down on the everyday carpenter in Ohio, to look down on these hardworking people in Texas or in Kentucky, and that played out last night. Trump, if we listen to him in his debates, the debate against Kamala Harris in particular, he did a lot of the dog whistling. He wasn't trying to appeal in any type of educated or academic way. He was speaking in everyday language, often vulgar, very anti-immigrant language. And a lot of people who don't have access to education, they fall for this dog whistling. They fall for that xenophobia. There are people who truly think like our country is being invaded by criminals. We have everyday headlines in New York City about the Tren de Aragua, this supposed Venezuelan gang that is dominating the streets of New York City. It's a lot of scapegoating. It's a lot of sensationalism, but it played into the hands of the Republicans this time around.
Definitely.
So I think maybe construction of academia, like an elite, it also distance maybe, the discourse and the narratives created by the Democrats regarding the masses. Because if you're going to think about it, it is an elite, okay? The access to higher education, the access to a scholar degree, a PhD, it is limited because of access, because of the economics. So people in the masses, they saw like a distance. I think the gap, ideology, gap between those who do not have a college degree, and I'm not assuming intelligence, I'm not assuming, IQ, I'm just assuming a possibility of access. So if you create this idea of an elite in academia, of course that the people who do not have access to that kind of higher education will see gems. And recall that Harris presented herself waiting for the results in an HBCU. Okay, she was at her university and she has been very vocal and very explicit of her having a higher education and having this kind of preparation and background. Okay, so maybe the masses are seeing a distance. Okay, maybe they are seeing this gap, this elite constructed, and they are behind. Also because academia has been on the lead with all of this wokeism, okay, and the fights for a better foreign policy. Academia and the universities were the ones that led the protests for the Vietnam War. Now they are leading the protests for the war in Gaza. And many people are seeing those problems like problems far behind, far left. We don't need that. We don't have to worry about it. It's not our problem to address it. So how we can go inside and fix what is inside? You have the motto of Trump. Trump will fix it. And the way he grasped and he had the vote of the people maybe with less opportunities for a higher education.
And I think it's always important not to think about this in terms of educated, uneducated people, but as education and higher education in particular as a marker of different sectors of society and the access they have to different things. So it's an expression of how, for example, the working class may be voting and thinking. And you were just mentioning Kamala Harris, and Democrat Kamala Harris had a victory speech scheduled on Tuesday evening from the Howard University, as you were just saying, Washington, D.C., which is a historically black higher education center. But after the results started coming in, her campaign co-chair, Cedric Richmond, addressed the gathered crowd and announced that she would not be speaking that day, but on Wednesday. Let's see.
We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
Apparently they believe in them but are not willing to stay up to meet them. But afterwards, on Wednesday, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris finally addressed supporters and assured that Biden's administration would guarantee a peaceful transfer of power.
Now I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
So after seeing these reactions from Kamala Harris, we'll go to a short break and we'll be right back with all the analysis.
¿Ya? Si hablaste con Kamala, vamos un momentico con Kamala. Ven conmigo si quieres.
We're back with United States Sides, and in the last segment, we finished with the concession speech of Kamala Harris that took place Wednesday and not election night as her supporters were waiting. Gladys, more on that.
Well, I think, Belle, that she was waiting until the last vote was counted. She had a strong hold, and I want to present the space between those words. She had a strong hold of hope. And she waited that, the process was going on her favor. But I want to recall some of the sentences and phrases of her speech considering her defeat and granting the victory for Donald Trump. She said that she felt gratitude with, the people that supported her, the family, and also the volunteers of the campaign. She even addressed the officials of the electoral institutions, and that was a gesture. That was her grace, because, Democrats are trying to stand in the posture of defending institutions, of being going on with the establishment, and those are points of contrast with what has been doing, Trump since 2020, when he said that he was stolen, that he got stolen the election, and he was saying that the other party, the Democrats, were committing fraud. So she said, "I'm so proud of the race we ran." And she was referring to the short amount of time she had for the campaign and all the activities she had to perform, and aside from her duties as vice president. But what is interesting about these words that she gave, these statements, she said that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. Okay, she will do what Donald Trump never did after the inauguration of Joe Biden, and that's interesting that she is announcing that. And she said that she's considering the election, even if she is not, of course, fully happy or fully pleased with the results. But she referred to two main points. First, for the young people to keep believing and what is fair, according to her, and what is just for the United States, and she is keeping that for her. And she also said that she will continue the fight, and that's one of the key elements. Will she run again? Will she prepare the continuity for the Democrat Party? Will she give the power to some legislators, or will have this work with some legislators to face Trump's advance? Well, we don't know. Those were her words. And it's also interesting she said that, but also authorities in California, which is Democrats' stronghold with 54 electoral votes that they gave her last night in the in the count of votings, they were saying that they are ready for Trump and they are ready to be the continuity of the Democrats. So there is like this idea of, yeah, we lost the election, but we were the fair ones. We had grace. We were polite. We did the things right, in contrast with the current president-elect. And it is the presentation of her as, she's taking the baton from Biden. She's closing good for Biden, okay? She did good for Biden. And maybe that's the idea for her to be announced or presented again to other election. What do you think about it?
I want to know where Biden is. He's still the president, right, of the United States of America. Very, very pathetic, very deflating to see at Howard University. The crowd was left without even hearing from Kamala Harris last night. I think one of the most important memes right now that we can focus on, it's a meme that I first saw. It caught my attention in 2008 when Barack Obama won the election, because so many people across the U.S. somehow thought that the victory of this personality of Barack Obama meant somehow the end of white supremacy and the end of imperialism and the end of Zionism, and nothing could be further from the truth. And what the meme shows is the Republicans bombing is always Iraq, Afghanistan, Panama, but then it shows the Democrat bombs, and the bombs of the Democrats have labels: Black Lives Matter, the rainbow flag, the trans flag. So I can't help but always post that meme, a classic anti-imperialist, class-conscious meme, which brings us back to the core issues. These elections have nothing to do with the personality of Tweedledee, of Tweedledum, whether it's stomach cancer or colon cancer. The American people are up against two mouthpieces who very predictably say the same things about foreign policy and the issues that are the most important to us. Nothing really changes at its core, and we urge liberals to take a closer look at the American system, and the whole system is anti-democratic to its core. In 2016, what I most remember in New York City when Trump won, every liberal went into a panic. They started joining self-defense classes. Every socialist meeting was packed with new people, and the liberals said they were going to fight. A month later, they did not go to their self-defense classes. They didn't go back to any socialist meetings, and they stopped fighting. I think this time they're mostly just staying home from work. My 17-year-old, who's a senior in high school in Virginia, many of his teachers were absent this morning, which is quite telling. But how important to keep uniting, to not give up on the American people. It's that very academic language and arrogance of looking down on our fellow Americans that created the space that Trump now, as the 45th president and now the 47th president, is able to jump into and take advantage of.
Precisely, Danny, and as reactions to this outcome of the presidential elections in the U.S. are pouring in, we saw many chiefs of staff and chief of state, heads of state that were reacting to this. But let's hear from one head of state that had something to say regarding this.
It is a golden opportunity for this historic return of Donald Trump to put an end to wars, not to open any more war fronts, to allow U.S. to have respectful relations, civil dialogue, understanding with all of Latin America and the Caribbean, relations to diversity in our continent, We have always been willing since Comandante Chavez, the Bolivarian Revolution, has former President Bill Clinton, and former President George W. Bush pass through the White House. 8 years to the former president, Barack Obama the first, 4 years of the president, elect Donald Trump 4 years, of President Joe Biden,
George W. Bush, 8 años al expresidente Barack Obama, los primeros 4 años del presidente reelecto.
And we have always been Delcy, you know it, Cilia, you know it. I know it to me as Foreign Minister of Chavez. In 2006, we have always been willing to relations of dialogue, sensibility, understanding, respect. And I ratify to the United States of America, to all the society, that the way has to be the new relations of respect, sensibility, dialogue, and understanding.
And those were the words of the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, who had, a special show today, and he was addressing the outcome of the U.S. elections. And it is so interesting because when he was the winner back in July 28th, one of the many heads of state and one of the many governments that tried to dismiss, to try to smear this victory was the President of the United States, Joseph Biden. And also, he was disrespecting the system and the voting system here in Venezuela. And it is primordial to recall that because in this occasion, the President, Nicolás Maduro Moros, is just respecting and giving his stance and his position regarding this victory. And he was saying something very interesting, and is that Trump has the opportunity to close all the open wars that started under the Democrats, and also the conflicts, the aggression, the hostilities towards Latin American progressive countries. Danny?
Yeah, Nicolás Maduro is the maximum representative of the Bolivarian people of Venezuela, is really giving an example, class of respect for the sovereignty of the people of the United States. If only our leaders, Democrat and Republican, could reciprocate. That'll never happen. Never have we seen in U.S. history respect towards the self-determination of other countries that the United States can't control. And I think this election was telling because the Democrats historically have tried to paint themselves as the peaceful white doves, just so innocent, I know, right? How many wars did Barack Obama start? Of course, the dismemberment, the colonization, the bombing, very cruel, of Libya, which we never hear about today. A dirty war against the Syrian people in Paraguay, country America haven't even heard of, and Manuel Zelaya, who was couped in Honduras as well. Interesting now, it's the Republicans leading the charge for peace. We saw Tucker Carlson go and interview Vladimir Putin. That's something that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton were so afraid of, to humanize Putin. Well, that cut into the military complex's budget. So how ironic that the ones they always try to frame as the war hawks, the Republicans, some major personalities like Tucker Carlson, Trump himself saying he's going to end this proxy war in Ukraine. That could earn Trump himself more assassination attempts. Anything could happen. People want predictions. Many things are unpredictable. But if there's another assassination attempt against Trump, and if one were to be successful, the last two were unsuccessful, though one bullet did graze Trump's right ear, certainly that could be a harbinger for even deeper polarization, or even some type of militant, militia showdowns. We know that the FBI continues to raid the homes of many Americans in violation of their Second Amendment rights. There's new legislation that the House is trying to pass against militias, so they are afraid of an armed and conscious American populace that can rise up against the entire system and rise up against its maximum representatives, the Trumps, the Bidens, the Bushes, the Obamas, these ruling class families, could not be more distant from our everyday economic reality.
Yeah, Danny, and just for doing or enhancing your point here, was Barack Obama back in 2015 who imposed the first sanctions against Venezuela and all the legislation that today is straining the economic lives and the well-being of the Venezuelan population. And also, I want to announce now and present some of the reactions on social media that we had after the outcome of these elections. I'm asking for them. So then let's start with the reaction on X from Kamala Harris. Let's see it. So we have this of her and we have text, and she posted, "My heart is full today for gratitude for the trust that you have placed in me and full of for your country and for all. Also, the outcome of the election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, but hear me when I say the light of America's promise will always burn bright." Those were her words, and similar. Those words are similar of her conceding speech, and she continued saying, "Earlier today I spoke with President Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I told him that we will help him and his team with that transition, and we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power." Peaceful is the word of this sentence, okay? She is trying to clarify that she is not similar to Trump in this, and that she will cooperate with institutionality and will cooperate with the president-elect, even if she is happy or not with the election and what happened yesterday. We have other reactions, and now we'll go to Jill Stein. Okay, so there will be a tweet of her, and let's recall she was the runner for the Green Party, and Jill Stein, she has been running for several times. She was first in 2016, afterwards in 2020, now in 2024. And she is just, in this long text that we have on screen, she's just slamming the bipartisanship. She's slamming the electoral college system and explaining that the economic and political elites are just straining the real will of the people and are just letting them down. Let's see the reactions from other candidates and political figures in the U.S. after the outcome of these elections. We have on screen the reaction in a post of Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. They were the formula of the Communist Party for 2024, and there is a statement of her and saying the results of the election demonstrate just how the Democrats have failed at fighting for defending the people. Only the people will save the people, and that's a phrase we have been hearing a lot of these days. Not only because of the United States Socialist Party and the activism, these alternatives they have been doing there. It is also one of the phrases that encapsulates, I think, the disbelief of the people in the institutions, in the establishment, and the governments, and those who are the political elites.
Okay, so we're now going live with one of our analysts as we continue to analyze what happened yesterday and also understand the motives why this election win it did. And we now have live Yvonne Telles. She's an international law expert, and she's sharing with us in this special program regarding the U.S. presidential elections. Good evening, Yvonne. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Happy to be here again.
So just to begin, we would like to this is our first show after the election, so we are trying to just really understand and get a comprehension from our perspective of what happened yesterday and how this could impact the country and then the world, also our region. So what is your read on the electoral win of Trump?
Okay, I think definitely the issue number one of this election was the economy. I think that explains a lot why Trump was reelected. However, if we see the major matrix of the U.S. economy, we can say that the U.S. economy is going well. But however, Americans still vote favorably, and a significant number of voters blame Joe Biden and even Vice President Kamala Harris failing to make enough improvements for Americans' financial situations over the past 4 years. So maybe that's one of the main reasons. The other ones I think remain pretty stable. And I'm talking about, for example, the union leaned toward Harris, men leaned toward Trump. One of the surprises was that most of the Latino men embraced Trump in this case rather than previous elections. And I think that one of the other reasons was that white voters without college degrees were the ones that represented Trump, and I think that's the base of support. So, and as we can see, or when we were seeing the reactions of voters or previous to the elections, the main one of the main concerns was the economy, and most of them, or these concerns related to these, for example, immigration policies, blaming migrants again for probable failures of the economy. So I think that's one of the reasons that can explain why voters voted for Trump instead of Kamala. Another very strong point, I think, is that the fact that, for example, how this rhetoric, this unusual rhetoric that Trump holds, for example, representing some unique or unique and very different ways of doing this politics, seem to have captured the younger voters that Kamala failed to capture in this place, and she was one of the ones who was called to just bring those voters to her back, but she failed to do it, and that will be kind of a response to these young voters that were a definite group and a very important group of voters that not only represented these electoral votes but also the regular votes, as we've seen that not only Trump was winning or won because of the electoral votes, but because of the regular popular vote. That's something unusual as well.
Thank you, Yvonne, for your input. Sadly, we are short on time tonight, but it's really helped us understand a little bit better your perspective on what happened last night in the United States. We appreciate your participation in United States Decides.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are about to close our analysis just for tonight. So any last remarks just before we conclude on this first read on Trump's win? Danny?
Well, listening to Presidente Nicolas Maduro, I'm reminded of what respect can look like between different countries. Democrat or Republican, we have not seen a U.S. president respect the Caribbean and the sovereignty of South America. Both Jose Marti and Simón Bolívar warned about this imperial plague. And I think it's especially important right now to think about this as the Cuban people confront Hurricane Rafael, which has knocked out their electric grid. But it's not really the natural disaster that concerns me in Cuba, it's the colonial disaster. 65 years of colonial policy punishing the Cuban people because of the popularity of their leadership, an anti-imperialist leadership, a courageous leadership, and how opportunistic, how telling that in Cuba's most difficult moments that whether it's Biden or Trump back in 2016, who put into effect more than 630 new coercive policies within this blockade to try to cause hunger and all types of pain to the Cuban people. So I think it's important to end on this high note. Nicolas Maduro is not just the president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, he's the president of all people across the world who believe in working people, who believe in equality. And we're just super grateful that a TeleSUR exists to tell the truth, because as I go through the headlines, which is part of my job and responsibility as an international affairs analyst, having to read CNN and MSNBC and Fox and Breitbart and Newsmax and the New York Times, it's so painful to see the same rhetoric about how great the United States is and the American dream, but how important to ask about the Venezuelan dream, the Bolivarian dream, the Cuban dream. And as we know, regardless of who won last night, it is a horizon of a lot of struggle and resistance that's in front of all of us peace-loving people across the world.
Yeah, precisely. And I think one of the closing words we have to say is that those numbers are speaking about realities, are speaking about social realities, and are speaking about people. People that thought about a future and had a decision to do in terms of their survival. And those are readings that we have to do in upcoming emissions and upcoming broadcasts.
Exactly, and in this way, we are now concluding this special show once again. It's really gone past fast because there's a lot to talk about, but we will continue to analyze everything regarding the U.S. election, the Trump win, and what that means both for the country and also for the world. So thank you, Danny Show, once more for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Gladys, as well, as usual.
Thank you, Belen. Thank you, Danny. We will see us in next time.
Exactly. My name is Belen de los Santos, and this is United States Decides 2024.
Russian and Ukrainian peoples share common